This is part 7, chapter 66, and the beginning of part 7, consciousness. A human being is part of a whole, called by us the universe, a part of a limited time, part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a thought of optical delusion as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us. Our task is to be free is our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion to embrace all living creatures as a whole, and the whole of nature in its beauty. Albert Einstein. Two things are infinite: the universe and human stupidity, and I'm not sure about the universe. That was Albert Einstein. Again. Chapter 66, Connor. Connor reigns consciousness with nothing but lazy confusion where his thoughts ought to be. His face aches, and he can see out of only one eye. He feels pressure over his other eye. He's in a white room. There's a window which can see daylight. This is unquestionably a hospital room, and that pressure over his eye must be a bandage. He tries to lift his right arm, but there's an ache in his shoulder, so he decides it's not worth the effort just yet. Only now does he begin to piece together the events that landed him here. He was about to be unwound. There was an explosion. Then there was a revolt. Then Lev was standing over him. That's all he can remember. A nurse comes into the room. "So you're finally awake. How are you feeling?" "Good," he says, his voice a little more than a croak. He clears his throat. "How long?" "You've been in a medically induced coma for a little over 2 weeks," says the nurse. 2 weeks. With a life that has been lived day to day for so long, 2 weeks sounds like an eternity. "And Risa? What about Risa?" "There was a girl," he says. "She was on the roof of the shop of the Harvest Clinic. Does anyone know what happened to her?" The nurse's expression doesn't give anything away. "That can all be sorted out later. But, no buts. Right now you need to heal. And I have to say that you're doing better than anyone expected, Mr. Mullard." His first thought is that he hasn't heard her right. He shifts uncomfortably. "Excuse me?" She stuffs his pillows. "Just relax now, Mr. Mullard. Let's handle everything." His second thought is that he must have been unwound after all. He's been unwound, and somehow someone got his entire brain. He's inside someone else right now. But as he thinks about it, he knows that can't be. His voice still sounds like his voice. When he rubs his tongue against his teeth, those teeth are all the ones he remembers. "My name is Connor," he tells her. "Connor Lassiter." The nurse studies him with an expression that's kind, but calculated, almost disturbingly so. "Well," she says, "as it so happens, an idea with the picture charred off was found in the wreckage. Belonged to a 19-year-old guard by the name of Elvis Mullard. With all the confusion after the blast, there was really no telling who was who, and many of us agreed that it was a shame to let that idea go to waste. Don't you agree?" She reaches over and adjusts the angle of Connor's bed until he was sitting up more comfortably. "Now tell me, what is your name again?" Connor gets it. He closes his eye, takes a deep breath, and opens again. "Do I have a middle name?" The nurse checks the chart. "Robert." "Then my name is E. Robert Mullard." The nurse smiles. The nurse smiles and holds out her hand to shake his. "A pleasure to meet you, Robert." As a reflex, Connor reaches out his right hand towards hers and gets that dull ache in his shoulder again. "Sorry," says the nurse. "My fault." She shakes his left hand instead. "Your shoulder will feel a bit sore until the graft is completely healed." "What did you say?" The nurse sighs. "Me and my big mouth. The doctors always want to be the ones to tell you, but the cat's out of the bag now, isn't it? Well, the bad news isn't that we weren't able to save your arm or your right eye. The good news is that E. Robert Mullard, you qualified for emergency transplants. I've seen the eye. Don't worry, it's a decent match. As for the arm, well, the new one's a little bit more muscular than the left one, but it's got good physical therapy, so can even that out in no time." Connor lets that sink in, playing over his mind. Eye, arm, physical therapy. "I know it's a lot to get used to," says the nurse. For the first time, Connor looks at his new hand. There are bandages over the padding on his shoulder, and his arm is in a sling. He flexes the fingers. They flex. He twists his wrist. It twists. The fingernails need clipping, and the knuckles are thicker than his own. He runs his thumb across the pads of his fingertips. The sense of touch is just as it ever was. Then he rotates his wrist a bit farther and stops. He feels a wave of pain surge through him, and that one resolves into a knot deep in his gut. The nurse grins as she looks at him. Parts often come with their own personalities, she says. Nothing to worry about. You must be hungry. I'll get you some lunch. Yeah, says Connor. Lunch. That's good. She leaves him alone with the arm. His arm, an arm that bears an unmistakable tattoo of a tiger shark. Ooh, Connor's got Roland's arm. That's pretty cool. That was chapter 66.